Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to the Horizon project update session. I'm Yank. I'm the PTL for Horizon.
I'm Rob. I was a PTL last time and a couple of cycles ago, and I've been a core for about 3 years now.
Okay.
Tap along. So, yeah, I'm kind of hoping everyone already knows this bit, but Horizon is the official OpenStack dashboard. It's been around since pretty much the start of OpenStack. It's one of the very, very first projects. It's extremely extensible and customizable. One of the big things about it, especially since the big tent, is that we provide a heck of a lot of extension points. So content plugins, I think we have something like 20, 30 different service plugins now, theming, and also other low-level overrides that you can do. The idea with Horizon is really to provide this kind of single access point to managing an OpenStack cloud. Yeah, so let's dig in a little bit more to the update. I'm going to be kind of playing the role of legacy PTL and covering some of the older features here. So apologies if you've been to one of our previous project update talks, because this is going to look a bit familiar for the next 5 minutes. So consistent thing throughout the last couple of cycles, based on feedback really, has been focusing on performance improvements, particularly at scale. One of the main things we wanted to do here was move existing Python content into AngularJS. It's got some really, really nice kind of async first handling, async default handling, I should say, so that it's nice. It's really nice being able to use Angular to load things in asynchronously, so you're not render blocking. Anyone who's been using Horizon for a while will know that kind of familiar thing where you click a button and the screen goes to that little loading spinner and freezes there for hopefully a couple of seconds, but often a couple of minutes. So as we move things to Angular, this starts to alleviate this problem because you ping in your view first and then slowly bring in your data as it returns from the APIs. So we moved the glance content and Swift content around the Ocata timeframe to Angular panels. So they're much, much more responsive. The Swift stuff particularly was almost unusable before that kind of time frame. And yeah, that was a really, really drastic improvement. One of the other things we've been doing is on the admin views, one of the issues you run into regularly is that the sheer amount of content that you're trying to address can very quickly hit thousands and thousands of items. So a setting we've added across many of these admin panels was this filter first toggle. So what this does is that it will load in an admin view with no content originally and initially even until you specify a filter on that content. So the advantage here is that rather than kind of loading an admin view and then letting your dashboard try and spam your APIs for 10,000 items across multiple projects, it will load in this view quickly, at which point you can either do your creation actions, for example, from an empty view because it'll load faster, or you can start specifying like a narrow filter to load data for. We found this is quite useful because a lot of the time when you are trying to do administrative tasks, you already have an idea of the kind of data you're looking for, and just kind of aggressively loading in everything is not actually very useful for users. So that was yeah, something that we found has been a pretty positive, had a pretty positive effect on the dashboard. Another thing we did to hopefully try and address some of this stuff is add the Oz profiler support. So this basically lets you, when you enable this developer panel, will let you get a kind of timeline of the API calls and when they return when you load a panel in. So this, again, lets you kind of do some much better in-depth debugging of what is taking a long time on panels. And this has been pretty useful already. We've started threading some of the API calls because with this profiling stuff, you can see immediately that you've got page rendering being blocked behind multiple serial API calls, but it lets you figure out exactly which one of those is particularly heavy. On the Keystone side of things, we added K2K support. Yeah, I think we started doing some stuff a long time ago. This was one of those things that lay around for a long while, but that finally landed in Ocata. We also had a long-standing bug around token revocation where we were causing Keystone performance issues because we were, not Keystone performance issues, sorry, we were causing issues with long-running tasks where we were revoking tokens when people logged out. So if you kicked off a long-running task that called kind of multiple APIs within your cloud, and then you logged out, we were telling Keystone to revoke the token, and that would effectively break that task. So the usual example for this was if you were bringing up like a heat stack, and then you logged out immediately, that would break because then Heat would try and make all these API calls, and it would not work. We've also trying to work on the overall UX of Horizon. So we split up the sort of vague-sounding access and security panel. This had a collection of different tabs in it that never really had a place to live. So yeah, we had this sort of vague-sounding access and security panel. This made it difficult for people to find the content that they were looking for under this panel, but also actually caused performance issues because when you hit this page, you were loading in the data for all of the tabs under this panel immediately. So we split that out into these component pages, and that was quite nice. It made quite a big impact on like usability studies that have been carried out where people were trying to find some of these tasks, and that improved the discoverability of that stuff, which is pretty key when you're using Horizon because it is normally users with less experience of how the underlying cloud works. Moving forward into Pike, we finally landed microversion support. We'd been kind of debating this for a long while, the best way to handle this in a way that would make Horizon maintainable, but also allow us to adopt some of the microversion features. So we've added examples for Cinder and Nova. Pike is also around the time that, unfortunately, our activity kind of started to drop off a little bit. So it was definitely a bit of a less aggressive feature improvement, but we did land some pretty big maintenance things. We've continued to move out some of the Neutron dashboards, things that existed as Neutron plugins, stuff like LBAS and firewall stuff has been separated out into their own plugins now that are managed by the service teams. The idea there is that they can move at their own pace rather than being bottlenecked by the Horizon core team, which has unfortunately been shrinking over time. We added support for the next Django LTS, which I think has got security patches and other support now, I think until something like 2020. So that was pretty key for us. And we also dropped NovaNet. So again, NovaNet's been deprecated since pretty much as long as I can remember, and we finally kind of dropped support for that and started to kick out some of the content that we had, workarounds and things like that to make it work. And then the last thing to talk about, the kind of major pieces that went on in Pike were Neutron feature support. So we still manage in the core Nova, Keystone, Swift, Cinder, Glance, and Neutron. And one of the things we like to do is try and keep up with the services as they kind of rapidly add features. And so two of the things we worked on for Neutron were support for trunk ports and QoS. These unfortunately didn't manage to land, but they did make some good progress. They are hidden behind experimental flags for Pike, and hopefully they are going to be finished within Queens. I'll now pass you back to the PTL.
Thanks, Rob. So in Queens 1, we just released Queens 1 2 weeks ago. It includes 4 features and 46 bug fixes. You can find more information with the link here on Launchpad. I just want to go through the 4 features that were included. First one, consistent server-side filtering. So before this blueprint, there were different filtering options on different panels. For the server-side filtering, it's the one that there's a drop-down. You can choose the columns and put in a keyword that will search in the server side. And for the client side, it's the one, just one input box where you put in a keyword and just filter on the client side. So with this blueprint, it cleans up the panels by utilizing the different the search API from different Python clients and keep that server-side filtering as the default on different panels. So now it's consistent. The next one is Angular rows panel. This one was actually featured complete in Pike. The only patch that was merged in Queens 1 was just setting the default type of the panel as the Angular. So if you're using Pike, you should have all the code that you need to switch to Angular version. The next one is extensible page header. With this one, a setting was added so you can specify more templates for your customized page header. Last one on the list is the extensible login form footer. With this one, you can add additional contents on the login form. For example, the forget password link, you can put that on the login page footer. Another big achievement for this milestone is that we clean up the blueprints and backlog. During the Denver PTG, we reviewed the blueprints. There were quite a few of them were open a while back. So just to mention that we are understaffed now. So if you create a blueprint without assignees, it's unlikely that it will be accepted. And we also clean up the backlog. During the PTG, there were about 800 open tickets at that time. And a few team members have been working on the backlog grooming, and that helps a lot. And right now, we have about 470 bugs, excluding the one that needs more information. Okay, so that was for Queens 1. Let's look at the work that's targeted for the remaining of Queens. So we started the Angular JS conversion a few releases back. So the goal was never to convert this Django app into an Angular app. This is just a way that we try to improve the performance using the async from the Angular, and that will help a lot. And also, there is some user interaction. It's better to be done with JavaScript. So these are the few blueprints that we are working on for Queens. And for other services support for Neutron, Rob already mentioned the chunks and bandwidth limiting QoS. And for the Nova side, there's a blueprint to support the instance description. So you can add the instance description field during the creation of the instance and also the update. The next one is the server groups panel. So right now, if you're using the new launch instance model, there's a tab for the server groups. So you can select a server groups for the instance, but there's no way to create or delete the server group from Horizon. So this will be addressed in this blueprint. The other blueprints that are being worked on during this release is first merge Django OpenStack auth into Horizon. The original thought of having Django OpenStack auth as a separate repo was so that it can be reused by other projects. But it appears that right now Horizon is the only users for it. So, and usually when a developer has a patch for the Django OpenStack auth, there will also be another patch for Horizon. So that doubles up the development effort and also the project management effort. So right now we're merging the Django OpenStack auth into Horizon. And the next one is improve the documentation. A big part of the documentation was outdated, and we just keep adding information settings in it without updating the documentation. So a few big patches were already merged for you to see today's nicely formatted and updated documentations. The next one is Oslo config. So the Oslo config is the standard way to do the configuration in OpenStack. in Horizon, we use a Django configuration. So this blueprint will convert the Horizon config into using the Oslo config. And then the last one on this slide is to change the unit test to use mock. Mock is standard for OpenStack project as well, and it has a better assert message. So right now in the code base, different files are using mocks or mock. So one of this blueprint is to clean up some of the tests to make it consistent to use mock. For cross project work, for heat, we have been working with the heat dashboard team, and they actually have a session tomorrow morning. So to talk about that, they're adding a drag and drop plugin to create a heat template. And that's a plugin that they will add to the heat dashboard. And along with that, we started the discussion to move the heat dashboard out of Horizon. And as soon as the heat dashboard is available and stable, we will remove the heat dashboard code from Horizon. And right now it's targeted to be done around Queens 2. And for Keystone, there was a bug report open for the pagination support for identity panels. Right now, with the Keystone version 3, we don't have the pagination support for the identity panels. Earlier, Rob mentioned that the element filtering panel, that's a way to help these issues when you have a lot of items, like a lot of users on the users panel. You can specify the element filtering option. So the user will type in a keyword before they try to query a few thousands of users. And if you want more information, this is the link to look into that. It's under discussion right now. So that's all the features planned for Queens. Beyond Queens, as I mentioned earlier, that we are understaffed. Some of the blueprints that people already started, there were a few patches already merged, but for some reason that they left the project, so right now it's unassigned state. It would be nice if we can get some help to finish up those unassigned blueprints. And also performance improvement. This always been the case that we always ongoing issues, that there are some performance issues on the panel. And using Angular.js is one way to help these issues, but there are other things that we can do to help them improve the performance on different panels as well. And the next is to support more common operations. So the whole thing of having a dashboard is to provide user-friendly UI for user to do some powerful operations without seeing the complications of it. So the goal is to explore more common operations on the UI. And there's other things that we do on the UI to help the user. Even with the CLI, lots of parameters that you need to specify. With the UI, you can have the input box, and then it tells you what's required, what's not, and all the information you can put in there. And also, a lot of time that you will see a lot of help tooltips on the model or the panels that will help to give you more information if you don't know what you are not sure about the fields. So that's a good thing to use the dashboard. And last but not least, as always, we try to keep up with the changes in other OpenStack services. If they have new features, it would be good to let us know as well, so we can be better prepared for it. And so how to give feedback. We had a feedback session yesterday. We do this during every summit. And also, we have weekly Horizon meetings. Please check the link. Depending on your time zone, you can land on Wednesday or Tuesday. And then on the IRC channels, feel free to jump in and ask questions and anything that you want to bring up. So as I mentioned, we're understaffed, so we need your help. Anything is appreciated. So for the bug triage, anybody other than the creator of the reports can confirm the bugs. And feel free to leave any comment if you know something about the issues, and that will help the bug triage. And also the code reviews is simple, +1, -1 if it looks good to you, and +1 and -1 if you want some changes to be done. And also you can just leave feedback without giving the -1 or +1. And also if you see any issues, try to reproduce that with master branch. It would be nice if you can try to reproduce with master branch, but if not, you can just open a bug reports and mention that the version that you're using, so that we can reproduce the issues. And then it's fix bugs. So this is targeting for the next milestone. Usually it's when there's no assignees, we put that to be targeted as the next milestone, which means it's ongoing. It's not a specific milestone. So if you want to help out some of the bug fixes, that would be great. And also feel free to search on our bug tabs on the Launchpad. And also, as I mentioned, that we have some approved blueprints that were not finished. So if you feel comfortable after a while working in Horizon, then feel free to pick up some approved and unassigned blueprints. Okay, that's it for the update. Are there any questions?
I think we're kind of over time probably, but yeah, we're both around for the rest of the summit, and if anyone does have questions, please grab us on IRC or something, or grab us while we're walking around the summit. We're happy to help with things. Yeah, I could see the next team kind of eagerly waiting to give their update, so we'll get off the stage now, but thank you for coming along.
Okay. Thank you.